On Reddit, a Vietnam veteran told a story about a very creepy encounter he had during the Vietnam War. One of the toughest jobs during the war was going into the Viet Cong tunnels to kill the enemy. These tunnels were not only filled with enemy soldiers but also booby traps, and these brave soldiers were known as tunnel rats. One day this tunnel rat, was crawling with his partner in the deepest tunnel he'd ever been in. And when they finally arrived to the end, they were surprised that there were no booby traps in this cave system and that there was still an oil lamp lit in the last room. But there was nobody in there. But then they saw a tarp on the ground, and when they moved it, they saw stairs leading further down. But these stairs were very old, they couldn't have been built by the Viet Cong. So the two men with their pistols drawn proceeded to go down the stairs. And when they made it to the bottom, they saw about 10 Vietnamese people dressed in Viet Cong uniforms. But there was something not right about them. They had blank faces and were just staring into space. Their eyes were solid black, and they were just kind of rocking back and forth. The two men even waved their pistols and flashlights in their faces, but they just kept staring into the distance. Then they saw a bunch of weapons in the corner, but they were old and rusted. And at the end of the room, there was a golden icon of a lady, but instead of human legs, she had tentacles. Now these two men were really freaked out, and they believed that whoever these people were already dead. So they decided to rig the place with C4 and get the heck out of there as fast as they could. And while they were crawling back to the surface, they heard a woman's voice calling out to them. But they knew that whatever this was not human. Then once they finally got out of this tunnel, they told the other soldiers to get away because it was going to explode. But they didn't tell them about what they saw. And while they were waiting for the C4 to go off, they wondered who the heck was keeping those candles lit in that cave. And once the C4 went off, they felt a sigh of relief. And they didn't talk about this until many years later. There were also sightings of strange humanoid creatures that were called ghouls or vampires. During the Vietnam War, the Marines recruited members of tribes who lived in isolated mountain regions. But the Marines quickly learned that these tribes were afraid of going into certain areas of the jungle because they believed that phantoms or the Ma lived there. These tribesmen spoke of reanimated corpses that haunted the jungles, and if they caught you, they would kill you and drink your blood. And of course, the United States commanders thought that these stories were just folklore. But as the war began, reports started coming in about soldiers seeing strange humanoid creatures in the forest that had fangs and pure black eyes, and they lived in the trees. And soldiers during the night started to disappear. There was even a report stating that 2 American soldiers rescued one of their friends from one of these creatures, and they shot it multiple times, but the bullets seemed to have no effect. Now as the war raged on, there were a lot of alleged sightings and encounters with these creatures. Some articles that I read even claimed that this is why the United States government developed Agent Orange and napalm, and why soldiers would finish the job with flamethrowers because bullets didn't seem to work. Now what I found interesting about these sightings of the Ma, or whatever these creatures were, is the Vietnamese people also have another legend. They believe that spirits wander the forest and they need a place to live, so they inhabit the trees, and these spirits are known as tree ghosts. And if you cut down a tree without asking for permission or performing a ritual, you will be cursed. And these soldiers that encountered these creatures did say that they lived in the trees. Some believe that maybe these soldiers encountered some sort of large unknown bat species, as it was reported they had fangs and pure black eyes. There were also sightings of another creature that has come to be known as rock apes, a creature very similar to Bigfoot but just a little bit smaller. And I have covered this before, but for those that have not seen that video, I'll go over an interesting sighting. One day during the Vietnam War, a 6-man unit from the 101st Airborne Division were taking a break after a long and difficult hike through the harsh jungle terrain. The men were trying to get a little bit of shut-eye, but they were fully aware that the Viet Cong were close, so they were uneasy. Then the soldiers started to notice that the trees in front of them were shaking. Then they started to hear some strange sounds, so the soldiers thought that the enemy was aware of their position and they were getting ready to attack. So they grabbed their weapons and waited. Then, a very odd ape-like creature came out from the tree line, and it was just looking at the soldiers. This creature was about 5 to 6 feet tall, covered in red hair, and was extremely muscular. Now the men had no idea what they were looking at, and they started to argue over what it could possibly be. One of the soldiers said that it must be an orangutan, but the others disagreed, as orangutans do not live in Vietnam or anywhere remotely close to this region. And whatever this was a lot taller and a lot stronger looking than an orangutan. Now as the men kept arguing, this ape-like creature got unamused and it walked back into the jungle, and the soldiers wondered what this strange creature could have possibly have been. Now since there were so many sightings of these rock apes during the Vietnam War, there was an expedition, and these explorers were convinced that they were going to find an unknown species of ape, but after months of looking, they never found it, making many wonder, what did these soldiers see? Now, there were many sightings of ghosts during the Vietnam War, and some of these sightings happened many years later. In the spring of 1993, a Vietnamese farmer was on his way to work when he passed his wife and children on the road. His wife sat on a rock and greeted him scornfully as his children kind of cowered behind their mother. And this farmer was scared out of his mind because his wife and children died during the Vietnam War. And ghost sightings like this happen all the time. Another creepy story is about a haunted building that housed American soldiers during the Vietnam War. This building was plagued by accidents from the get-go, even some workers died while building it. Many blame these deaths on the unlucky number of floors this building has, which is 13. So the architect called in a shaman, and the shaman went to the hospital and got 4 dead bodies of virgins and placed them at the 4 corners of the building. He believed that these dead virgins would protect this building from evil spirits, but it probably only made things worse. To this day, residents hear screams of horror in the middle of the night. Sometimes they hear the sounds of a military parade marching through the building. And there's also a very common sighting of a ghost of a GI walking down the halls holding hands with his Vietnamese girlfriend. This building is known as one of the most haunted places in all of Saigon, and ghost hunters flock here hoping to get a glimpse into the paranormal. Another story I wanted to cover today is about another Mothman sighting in Chicago. At least a dozen of my subscribers have sent me links to the story. This sighting happened again at the International O'Hare Airport. There have been tons of sightings here, making me wonder what the heck is going on. The eyewitness stated, "I had just left work at the USPS sorting facility at the airport at about 11 p.m. and was walking out to my car when I saw something standing at the far end of the parking lot where I usually park. At first I thought it was a very tall person with a long coat. As I got closer to my car, I unlocked it, which caused my headlights to come on. My headlights then flashed on this person that was standing about 20 to 25 feet from my car, causing it to turn and look right at me. Then I realized that this was not a person, but a red-eyed creature with huge wings that were spread out. This thing must have been at least 7 feet tall. Then it made a terrible screeching sound and started to run towards me. Then it just took off in the night sky and flew right above me. I had never been so scared in my life." Now, these sightings in Chicago have been going on for years, and for some reason whatever this thing is seems to like this airport. It's been seen here multiple times. It's also been seen dozens of times just flying over the city. So if you live in Chicago, make sure to keep your phone or camera close by, as you never know. You might be the one to finally get proof of the Mothman. Until next time, this is Paranormal Junkie. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned.